Okay, welcome to the Techie Thursday now. These are the technical updates for the months of July and August, so over the summer period. Some of them are updates that sort of like tail end at the end of June, so we will include those as well. But here we go, there's quite a few of them and some quite nice ones as well. Some reason that isn't loading. So these are more just reminders. So this is like the Google for Education app hub. It's available to all versions of Google, whether that's fundamentals, standard, teaching and learning upgrades, or education plus, just to allow you to sort of like discover apps which are suitable within an educational environment.
It's been updated slightly in that the filtering's better. So if you can't know everything, can you? So if you get a history teacher or a science teacher who says, is there an app that does this? You can filter by subject now. So it makes finding things out a bit easier. And there are hundreds of apps in there. So if you get a request for some additional app that they might need to be able to find things a bit easier. Because how do you know all these things? You know, I don't know them all, and I'm being the luxury of time. So it's and apologies, I've requested access to some of these videos because they didn't get this. It's Google not getting the settings right, and I forgot to check your slide deck, James. So I apologise for that. I checked mine but didn't check yours. I do apologise.
Yeah. All right. So this one again, this is another one that Google haven't shared the video for, but it's basically deploying apps and tracking the usage of those apps directly through the Google admin console. Have you got anything to add to that, Paul? Or
no, I can't remember what the image was now. I just think it's streamlining the process basically, so it should be easier.
Yeah, I mean,
I've already been able to do it a bit, but it just makes it easier, I think.
A lot of these updates that you know today are a lot of streamlining, quite frankly, which I think are very good. So the next one is sort of like expanding the teaching toolkit. 10 new classroom add-ons. They're constantly adding to these. You can see some of them on there, like Screencastify, which we know is there, Pear Deck, which we know is there. Lots of other ones being added on a regular basis, which will allow you integrate within the Google Classroom environment to make it just easier for your teaching staff. And again,
you can also make a whitelist there. So
yeah,
if you don't want people to see stuff, if you've got a subscription to a particular software, if it's on that list, you can just make a whitelist and they only see the ones that they're allowed to make use of. So you don't go shopping whilst they're in the classroom, for example, if that's what you want.
Yeah, I mean, and also when it comes to sort of like third-party apps, it's always good from an admin point of view to have it on a whitelist only, particularly things like marketplace apps and things like that. Okay, the next one, again, this is more geared towards the USA at the minute, but it will be expanding into the UK, as we've mentioned previously. It's integrating with SIS, as the Americans call it. We call it MIS, so School Information Systems. And hopefully in the coming months, I don't know the time frame, but they will eventually get an integration with some of the more common management information systems within the UK. I would imagine, I think Sims is the one that they're, because it's the...
When this first came out, sorry, James, I keep interrupting you, don't mean to do it. When it first came out, I did have a route round, and there is in the deepest depths of the support pages a list of the ones on the list to be integrated. Sims is in there, and I know that's not one that FE colleges would use necessarily, but schools still do. It's still quite a common one. But Arbor wasn't when I looked, but it was kind of June, July when this was first announced that I looked. So it might be that there's a longer list now, but it was a pig of a thing to find. I've tried to find it last week again and couldn't find it, but I'm certain I've seen it that Sims is on the list, but Arbor wasn't at that time.
Yeah, I think
it was a really big one.
I think from a cloud point of view, Arbor and Bromcom certainly be integrated with Google. So
yeah.
The next one, this is a really useful one. If you've not looked at your devices within your domain, this is a really useful one. They've now got, if you look on the image there, they've now got a device dashboard, which allows you to look across your domain at your entire fleet of devices. So this will give you information such as which devices are on which operating system, so which version of Chrome OS. It'll give you statistics such as which devices are now no longer going to get upgrades, So they've gone out of sort of like life. It'll give you information on which devices have got, storage space. It'll give you information on CPUs in your fleet. It will also give you information on.
And it sort of goes up like a boot would, and it's got.
Is there someone talking in the background?
What will be our shin?
Yeah, it's Paul, I think. I don't know if can you just mute yourself, Paul? That would be cool. Thanks, my friend. No problem.
Yeah. It also gives information on sort of like hardware, so like the CPU, the RAM, things like that. So you're able to proactively identify sort of any risks that you may see within your fleet of devices, and then take action on them. So as it says there'll be links directly within the admin console of how to fix it. So if you've got, say, a certain percentage of your fleet of devices that are either out of scope for upgrade, or have an outdated Chrome OS version on them, then it will give you advice as to how you can proactively manage those. So that's a really useful thing, because previously you would just look at the devices and you'd have to click onto each one to find that information. Now it puts it all in one place so that you can just see that dashboard, the bird's eye overview of what is going on. So I think that's a wonderful tool, and it applies, of course, only to the Chrome Education Upgrade licenses of managed devices. This one is able, if you're putting out policies out there, you can now, for example, if you need to install an app onto devices, or for a certain group of people, rather than sort of like having to move users from one OU to another OU, you can actually configure it by groups. So you can push it out by groups. So if you've got, for example, in the screen there, it says sales at or admissions at, if they need particular group policies pushed out to them, you can do it via the Google groups that you've set up. This one is more to do with admins. So this is sort of like multi-approval on if you've got multiple administrators within a Google domain. Say you've got 2 or 3 super administrators within your domain, and one super admin wants to make a change to something within the domain. This allows you to set up multi-party approval. So if one super admin wants to make a change to, for example, something very sensitive, all the other super admins would need to approve it. So it's just a transparency thing more than anything else. So you can see, has it been approved by all of the admins, or has someone got a problem with that change and they may have an issue, and then that can be discussed, and a resolution come to. This one is using context-aware access for mobile devices. So if you've got advanced mobile device management turned on, which is part of Education Standard and part of Education Plus, then you can use the context-aware access to block devices receiving your educational data if it's got, depending on the condition of the device. So, for example, if the device has been tampered with, the security settings on the device has been tampered with, this would block the data being sent to that device. If it's, for example, a jailbroken phone, a jailbroken iPhone, or whatever, it would not send the data to that phone. So it gives you proper control over which data is going to which devices. This is just an update from the end of July about early access apps. And you can see on the right-hand side there, because we're now after July the 30th, if you need early access apps service status, if it's set to on, you won't lose access to the apps. These apps will only be off if the settings are turned to on. And then you can see there, it says, set it off, app status is on, you'll still have access to the app. So that's just something to be aware of, and that's only for early access apps. This one is a brilliant one. You may have seen it in your admin console because Google now like to put a nice little blue label saying new, but this is to do with managing compliance and your data controls. So within this, you can look and you can see the data regions that your data is stored in. You can look at things like your client-side encryption if you've got that set up, transparency, but it also shows you all of this of like data controls that you have when it comes to Google data import and export. So this is things like Google Takeout, who's got access to it, and things like that. So again, it's a bird's eye overview of your data control so that you've got sort of like privacy in mind. So another really useful addition to the admin console. This one is more to do with Apple. So this is sort of like, again, this is for devices, so iPhones and things like that. And you can basically, if you are signed up to a volume purchasing agreement, then you can distribute those purchasing those apps that you've done through the VPP to the devices in your domain. You can either require them to install it if it is particularly a company-owned device or a school-owned device. You can make that a requirement that they install certain apps onto their devices. And again, that's standard and plus only. This next one is APIs. So it's to do with Google Meets. So it's a new Google Drive API that allows you to sort of like read and download files created and edited by Meet. So the transcripts, the notes, the recordings, and more. This next one is to do with our friend Gemini. So this is the workspace extensions for all of the main Google apps, now available in open beta, which and this is for gemini.google.com, which means if it's an open beta, you do not need to sign up for it. It is off by default, but you can enable it at an OU or a group level, which is very exciting. Google Drive inventory reporting, again, it's another open beta. So that's allowing you to look at what is in the Google Drives across your domain. So you can actually get reports on data integration in particular when it comes to third parties, when it looks at Google Drive. So what is going on within your Google Drive and your third-party integrations. And again, it's standard and plus. This one, we've had Drive labeling for quite some time now. And admins have always been able to, for quite some time, create classification labels. Now you can actually create labels and you can manage them as well. And it says on there the label manager tool. I'll come on to that in a second because that's on another slide. But that's another really useful tool so that you as an administrator can manage which labels you're pushing out across the domain and what they're for. And you can actually use the label managers to apply new labels to Drive files. This is an addition, DLP rules. Should have DLP rules set up, absolutely. But this is now an extension to the DLP capabilities within Google so that you can create a DLP rule for Google Forms. Now, this is only for the content of the form. So if you're creating a DLP rule and someone is creating a Google form and they're asking a question within that Google form, which may potentially lead to a data loss, then you can apply a rule to that form. What it will not do is it will not apply rules to any submissions on that form. So that's an important thing to bear in mind. This is another Gemini thing. It's Gemini Education Premium only. and it is using the Gemini AI to, similarly with the data loss that we've just spoken about and the drive labeling and things like that, Gemini will do all that for you. But you need to have, it will only do it if you have a Gemini Education Plus license, and the license needs to be assigned to the person, obviously, that is going to be using this. But again, more and more, we see the Gemini AI being integrated to make people's lives easier. So if you've got a very large organization managing sort of like data across scale, label coverage, and things like that, and then auditing that, if you can have artificial intelligence do that for you, all the better. This one I touched on earlier, and I said we'll come back to it, Label Manager. So I've checked in our domain, and the Label Manager is there. It shows it's within security, access, and data control. You have a Label Manager. It will show you all of the labels that have been created by admins and what they're for, whether they are active or whether they are just drafts. And then within the Label Manager itself, it gives you the option to create new labels, which will apply to certain OUs. So that's a really useful, again, tool from an administrative point of view, is for you as an admin to be able to go in and find your label manager and apply certain labels. Say it could be things like finance only, or internal only. But again, that's standard and plus.
James, before we move on, can I ask a question about labels?
Yep.
Okay, with a show of hands, the hand tool at the bottom, how many people are using labels at the moment? So that's a no then. I'm not an admin person. James is the admin guy and Cisco in our team. But it seems to me that the option to automatically apply labels, which I believe you can, to say, look, if there's this kind of data in this document, apply this label, and then apply that label to a data loss protection rule, seems to me a really, really handy thing. So every single time someone makes a document that includes national insurance number, then the sharing settings gets locked down so they don't accidentally share it out. Or if they're in a group that's allowed to share it, they get the message saying there's sensitive information, are you sure you want to share it? So they get made to think about the decision.
Yeah,
seems to me a good thing, and I'm surprised that people aren't using them.
Yeah, I mean, with the labels, certainly the DLP rules are highly recommended, because they have, you can create, certainly in further education, higher education, universities and things like that, if you have sensitive information, for example, research information that you need to lock down to within your domain, call it like Project Starmer, for example. If it was a highly secretive research project called Project Starmer, if someone typed that in a chat or in an email or in a drive, you can apply a DLP rule to that, so that it will not send that outside of your domain. And you can also set up alerts so that if someone puts into a chat, for example, or into a document, a credit card number, national insurance number, a passport number, anything like that, you'll get an alert. And you can also set it so that it'll send them a warning saying, are you aware that you're sharing personally identifiable information? It's a great way of protecting sensitive data, but it's also a great way of negating what I call the organic risk, being the problem between the chair and the keyboard. People, because we're all busy, you might not realize that you're doing something in chat or in Drive or an email, for example, that is potentially, from a data point of view, going to put your institution in a whole world of hurt. So highly recommend using DLP rules and tying them, as I said earlier, to context-aware access as well. So this next one is an American one, let's face it, because all of the updates in enterprise workspace tend to start in America, and then they can be applied within the UK. So this is, admins you can centrally set things like grading periods, categories, and scales. But then teachers also have the ability to override that. The changes that you would make as an admin to these things will only apply when a new class is created. So it won't affect any existing classes. And that's Education Plus only.
Sorry to keep doing this to you, James.
No, I heard someone put something in the chat.
Yeah. Grading periods also affect the analytics. So if you've turned the analytics on for your teachers, they can see the analytics of their own classes, so they get the overview picture of seeing how they're doing and things. And if you've got the grading page, your terms or your semesters or whatever you call them, then it will do the analytics by term. So it's kind of quite a handy little tool for them. Not necessarily to say that you as an admin have to impose that, but it's a useful tool for you to make them aware of.
Yeah.
And of course, the grading scale, if you wanted to change it from numbers to 9 to 1, like the GCSE gradings, for example, then you can also do that. And you can set the grade boundaries each year as they change them year on year. So you've got quite a good level of control. So even if you're not setting them globally in the admin panel, it's worth letting your staff know that those tools are there if you're on the GU Plus or teaching and learning options.
This next one is we're spoken about DLP rules and context-aware access. This is by combining DLP and context-aware access, you can prevent downloading, printing, put restrictions on what can happen to docs within your domain. Now, this is something that's part of the Security Center in Plus and Standard. In that you can actually, if a document, for example, has been shared outside of the domain, you can find it, and then you as an admin can go in there and restrict the downloading, printing, and copying. And I always say it's sort of like if it's a school that's doing a project with a school down the road for a trip for the next 2 weeks, then they would need to share outside of the domain with the staff and the other school, but they don't need constant access to the information. So not only can you restrict the time frame that they have access to, but if it's been shared outside, you can then say you've got eyes on only. You're not allowed to download, you're not allowed to print, and you're not allowed to copy the file. And you can see someone does try to make a copy. Once those DLP rules with context aware is put in place, it won't let them. It'll tell them the restrictions on the folder. So it's just keeping control of the data again. This one is to do with basically app scripts and sheets. So you as an admin can control the URLs in particularly which are accessing using the app script. So you can create an allow list to either enable a URL to access it or disallow it. So it basically, this, as Google say, this is taking a zero trust security posture so that you're saying, I'll allow that URL. I'm not going to allow that URL. So again, control of your data. Right, this one again is Education Gemini Premium. This will allow Google AI to do your note-taking in meetings. So you don't have to turn anything on. You just let Gemini say, take notes for me, please. And it would take notes and save it to your Google Drive. Just making life easier for everyone. This next one's really important. It's for students in Google Chat. I'm sure you'll all be pleased to see that they now have a setting that you can restrict students so that they cannot create direct messages, group messages, and spaces. This is only for new spaces, though. If they're currently in a chat room, for example, and they're currently in an existing conversation, it won't be able to affect that. So it's not retrospective, so to speak, but another really useful safeguarding tool. This one is to do with sort of like APIs and multi-party approvals. So if you're if someone wants to kind of like create a third party, it would need to be approved by super admins. So that is basically allowing the super admin eyes on, this is what someone's requested, and they want to have it access to, for example, Google Drive, or they want access to Google Calendar, and then the super admin would receive an alert, and they would either look at it and approve it or not approve it. And I've gone through those rather quickly. Next updates, 3rd of October, we're back to our monthly schedule. So let me just stop that. Stop presenting.
Any thoughts, any questions about any of that from anyone?
Can I ask a question? On the taking notes for me thing, we sort of, when I applied a load of Gemini premium licenses or whatever they're called to a bunch of teachers that requested it earlier in the year, one of the things they're really keen to do was to be able to take notes, notes of meetings. But all of these meetings are taking place in person, and at the time they would only work if the other person was on the other end of the of a Google Meet, which at least that was what they fed back to me. With this take notes for me business, will it take notes from multiple people sitting in the same room? Because that's really valuable to us.
I believe it's just within a meet, Nick.
Right. Okay. So I can't start a meet and have multiple people at this end and it transcribe the different people talking. The only reason I say is we've looked at commercial products do the same thing, but they're not quite there. And we're sort of putting my hopes at least on Google for this.
Paul, do you know?
Yeah, I think I did precisely that in with one of our customers. We were talking to some of their business support teams, and I turned on Gemini just on my device, and I was the only person in the meet, and it did take the notes, but I didn't recognize the different voices, of course.
Okay.
Because it doesn't recognize your voice; it recognizes who's logged into that particular meet. So it would all the notes, even if they heard the other voices, would have come from me in that particular instance. So I don't think that it does that multi-voice recognition. I think that's a step too far for it, a bit too clever for it. Maybe one day, but not.
It's a shame, as I say, it's a shame because there are a number of other commercial offerings out there that do that. Particularly
have you
given
tried
that,
getting everyone?
Oh, sorry.
So if you got everyone to join it via companion mode, do you know about companion mode?
Mm-hmm.
Companion mode basically is basically designed to, if everyone's joining in the same room, if you all join by companion, I'll explain to everyone just in case. G.co/companion takes you to a Meet page and asks you to put the code in. You know the 10-digit code at the end of a Google Meet. Take the dashes out. You've got 10 characters, usually letters. Put that in, and it joins it, but it sorts out all your audio automatically, so there's no feedback and anything like that. But you can still unmute and talk. So it might well be that might be a way to do it, but they need to be managing their unmuting and muting and things. So it's not a perfect solution.
I think I'll keep on experimenting with all this stuff. I think it's wanting it not to interfere. I think particularly the context is one-to-one meetings with pupils, where we obviously want a recording of it. But if you're a teacher meeting with other people, you want to give them your undivided attention, whatever it's about. And so having the distraction of multiple devices, all of which need to be set up in a very certain way, I think that's probably a little bit of a stretch for us at the moment. But it might work. It might work for kind of board meetings and things, which is the other use case for us.
The thing about the Gemini take notes is it's a summary of the meeting. If you're having a student interview, you might well want a transcript. Transcript is word for word transcript. The Gemini does a summary. So it's worth just remembering that. So the transcript is part of your Education Plus license, not part of your Gemini license. You've still got that without the Gemini. Shouldn't perhaps be saying that we have. It was just a summary. So useful if you've arrived at a meet late, you can click on the Gemini if it's been running, and you can read a summary of what's been discussed before you then join into the discussions, which is quite nice.